got so excited. I was like, it's King Tut. There's going to be an episode about King Tut. I was like, yes. Welcome to Bat Lessons, the Batman History Podcast. I'm Alex.
And I'm Brian.
And this time we're talking all about the Caped Crusader, the cartoon that's on Amazon Prime. Came out just like 4 or 5 months ago. Getting around to it. Trying to be topical, but not late. Do you have any non-spoiler thoughts before we jump into... Because the statute of limitations, I think, is passed, right? We're going whole hog, No,
I totally agree. Non-spoiler, I would say that I've seen some critical reviews. Yeah. And, like, for the most part, I don't agree. I loved it. I thought it was super fun. I'm very much more into, like, how much fun did I have versus, like, how realistic is it?
Sure. I definitely think this show in particular got some... There are reviews of lots of things that I think... There are valid criticisms of the show, but I think there are certain pieces of media, for whatever reason, get caught up in, like, the culture war. I think, like, there are things that get kind of review bombed because a segment of people decide that they are unhappy with the content, and I felt like a lot of the sort of negativity around the show I saw online was, like, not necessarily well-founded, but, like, aiming for clicks. So
I saw some that I was like, yeah, that actually makes perfect sense as a criticism.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Didn't bug me.
yeah, 100%. I guess I only bring it up to say, you know, if you've seen some negativity about it and you've decided not to give it a chance, I would go back. I think this is worth the watch.
If you're listening to us, you'll probably like it because there's like tons of Golden Age stuff in there. There's so many good references. Yeah. That was part of it, was candy for me in a way.
Yeah, 100%. It's like almost like some of the work we've been doing, learning more about the 40s and 30s for the show, for Bat Lessons, was like preparation for Cape Crusader. So yeah, very cool in that regard. This was the first show in a long time that I've watched that had ads. I thought that was really interesting. Do you watch many shows on Amazon Prime?
No. And I don't actually remember ads.
You didn't have ads?
I don't know. I don't remember them.
I wonder if I'm like on a crummy plan. Here's the thing. We watched The Rings of Power on Amazon Prime.
So did we.
No ads on that. For whatever reason, when I watched this show, ads. And the density...
I really don't remember.
Oh my goodness. The density is really high. So they were doing 3 minutes worth of ads. They did 2 breaks at a minute and a half each. And the show is 24 minutes long, but without the end credits, it's only 22 minutes. And I didn't even bother like doing the opening sequence, the theme song and stuff. Mm-hmm. But like the density's crazy high. It's like higher than old television over the air used to be. So I was very frustrated with it.
That sounds super frustrating.
Speaking about it being on Amazon Prime, so that's something you asked me about earlier.
Yeah, like all of Batman is on Max.
Right, because it's a Warner Brothers property.
Right, and this is not, and that's super weird.
Yeah.
What gives?
Well, so I don't know if you remember, there was like, Warner Brothers went through a little bit of turmoil, right? Where they were like merging with Discovery, and they went through a few CEOs.
Yeah, it used to be HBO Max, and then it became Max because of that big merge. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So David Zaslav is the CEO now, and he came in, and they decided that the show wasn't going to be on HBO Max about the time he was coming in. He was like cleaning up house, and they actually got rid of a lot of like kids-oriented stuff that used to be on, like, I don't know if you remember, Sesame Street used to be on HBO Max, is not on Max now.
No idea.
They paid a bunch of money for the Sesame Street license.
It's on like PBS Kids for free.
Yeah, well, yes, but like they had like the back catalog and stuff like that. I think it was some sort of like exclusivity deal where like it never left PBS, but it was on HBO. Anyway, It got canceled. They decided it wasn't going to be on HBO Max, and at that point they decided to shop it around. And like sometimes that's how shows do get canceled. Like something's greenlit and they're working on it, and then they can't find a buyer. But it's actually really common for a show to, a production company to pay for it, to make it, and then decide that it needs to go somewhere else. So like Ted Lasso, as an example, everyone knows that as an Apple TV show. That's a Warner Brothers show too. Some executive at some point was given right of first refusal and said, like, we made this television show and we want to put it on Max. And that person said, I bet we can get more money for it if you sell it to someone else than if we put it on our own service.
Yeah. That's interesting because there's like the complexity of business, you know, like we just did an episode a few months ago about all the Valley Fair.
It was the theme parks. Which by the way, if you haven't watched those episodes, the vlog in the theme park got a lot of views. I think it's like 1,000 views or something like that right now, or 800 somewhere up there, which is a lot for us. But the history episode that precedes it about the theme park history of Batman, it only got like 150 or 200 views or something like that. So like, well worth it, because you're right. There was all kinds of like business machinations and like mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah. And it was all, and it ended up hinging on this whole idea that like they wanted Batman connected to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers like owned enough of a stake in one of the two that they just like went all in.
Six Flags,
Yeah. So that, I mean, that whole thing and like the Universal thing fell through, right? Like it's all just like interesting stuff because they were trying to like glom things together. Yes. And this is a case where they did that with one exception. Which is kind of weird, you know?
When you learn the history behind a lot of that stuff, like you realize that, you know, there are creatives that care a lot about these intellectual properties, but in a lot of ways they're like, you know, chess pieces on a board that are getting moved around.
Oh yeah, it's all about money.
Yeah. I did want to talk a little bit about the folks who were behind the television show.
I want to hear it. I'm really curious because like when the intro credits run, it's like J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's Matt Reeves.
Yeah.
Right. So like I want to hear about it.
So the showrunner for the show is Bruce Timm. And Bruce Timm is actually the showrunner for a ton of stuff. Most importantly, probably to the audience of this show, is Batman the Animated Series.
Yes.
So it's the same guy that's in charge of this show as was in that one, but also the Superman show that was happening at the same time as Batman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, the Green Lantern animated series, all kinds of stuff, like creator of Harley Quinn, all those sorts of things. Did a little bit of comic book writing, but mostly, you know, animated television, producer. And then there's just like a, you know, who's who of executive producers. Tons of names you heard of. You're right. J.J. Abrams, Bad Robot Productions, Matt Reeves, who directed the Batman with Robert Pattinson, Ed Brubaker, who is a comic book writer. It's wild, by the way, to see an executive producer on a television show about Batman be someone who is like a prolific Batman writer. James Tucker, Daniel Pipsky, Rachel Rush Rich, and Sam Register. I don't know those names, but like if it's anything like all the other names that are attached to the show, they just like, they called up everyone and was like, you want to work on this thing? And like everyone's a star. It doesn't matter if it's like, they even had people who have like one or two lines that are voice acting in the show.
Yeah.
They're famous. Like they're basically cameos, right? Like everyone who worked on this was really into it. But notable writers for episodes of the show, Greg Rucka, who is another big time comic book author. So it's really cool that they're getting people who write comic books to come and write. That is not typical, right, for this sort of thing, that they're actually going. Greg Rucka is a prolific Batman writer and Batman mythos writer. Like, he did a famous sort of recreation of Batwoman for modern times. Ed Brubaker wrote an episode of the show. He wrote, by the way, a comic series that's famous called Gotham Central that is about the cops. So like all of these interactions really cool. Where, you know, we have whole episodes where it's mostly like Bullock and Flass and Montoya and Barbara and Jim. Yeah, that's 100% him. That makes total sense.
Is this person related to the Gotham TV show that takes place like before Batman?
No, that's a good question. I doubt it. Let me look.
Because that one's like very, I haven't watched it, but I know it's like quite a bit more like detective or cops heavy because they don't have Batman yet.
No, he's not coming up on the Wikipedia. And that's not surprising, right? Like for whatever reason, people in Hollywood have historically been like, we're too good for the comics. Like famously on the set of the 2000s X-Men movies, Kevin Feige, who is now the executive producer in charge of all the MCU movies, was just a producer on those films, is secretly like giving comic books to the actors on the set, like, because they're not allowed, right? So the directors and the writers are like, we're not doing comic books. The reason they're wearing like all black leather is because the yellow spandex is childish and it's stupid and the comics are dumb. And we're like distancing ourselves from it. It's inspired by, but we're not doing the comics, right? And so Kevin Feige's showing up and he's like, hey guys, you know, come meet me at the trailer afterwards. And he's like slipping them the comics.
That's
so, like,
really funny.
Yeah. There's all these interviews of like Hugh Jackman being like, the only reason I know anything about Wolverine is because Kevin Feige was slipping me the comics on the DL.
Man, I mean, that actually says a lot of cool things about Kevin Feige.
Yes, it does. Well. Yeah. So to see names like Greg Rucka and Ed Brubaker is unusual, right? That they've gotten people who write comic books to come and work on the TV show.
Yeah.
That's really cool. We've also got Mark Bernardin, who is a co-host with Kevin Smith on Fat Man on Batman and Fat Man Beyond. Yeah.
That's cool.
Also a extremely talented writer separate from that. He was a writer for, I think it was season 2 of Picard. He's written Spider-Man comics before.
Nice.
A bunch of other stuff. There's a show about a circus that I forget. It was an Amazon, or I think it was Amazon. I don't know. But like, yeah, freaking. Now you're gonna make me Google it. Mark Bernardin writing credits.
Was it It
No.
Part 2?
And it was a television show.
I know, I'm being a troll.
Carnival Row.
Carnival Row. Huh.
Yes. He was a producer on Treadstone, which is the television show about
Jason Bourne.
Jason Bourne, yeah.
Huh.
So he was a writer on Castle Rock. He's been a writer on a ton of stuff. And Haley Gross also is someone who, she is more of a video game writer. It's interesting. She co-wrote The Last of Us Part 2, kind of famous video game writer. Did an episode of Cape Crusader. So it's just like tons of like great creatives all on this project for sure. One thing that I learned about was that they actually, when they recorded this, it was during COVID. And that's how long they've been animating it. It's been in the works for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so Batman the Animated Series famously, they were all in the same room together. So they would do table reads basically, and they would record face to face. So Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill bouncing off of each other.
Yeah.
Not the case for this show.
You can tell.
You can tell, yes.
Yeah.
So they're all in separate rooms at separate times recording the lines. It's not that uncommon, honestly, in animation. Batman the Animated Series is the exception. This is more of the rule.
Especially like animated movies and stuff. Like they don't see each other. Right. Like I think there are some famous examples of people who worked together for a long time and never like saw each other in person ever.
Right. Which is unfortunate. I think you can tell a lot of times, but
yeah.
So I have some notes about technology and time setting because I know that's the sort of thing we're interested in. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or do you want to talk about the characters?
No, that actually works perfectly with me. Like my top notes for this section are like, when is it?
Yeah.
What's going on in Gotham? Like, as the atmosphere, and then go from there. I would say I watched a few reviews and I did find it really interesting that they were like, I don't know when this takes place. And we're like, oh, they're really interesting takes on some of these characters. Yeah. And I'm like, it's the golden age. Like, it's like, I recognize that this is the 1940s. This is the early comics. It just like kind of take after take, like they've got, we'll talk about him later, but like they've got the first version of Alfred because it's the golden age.
They've got a mashup of the Alfreds. Yeah.
No, it's fair, but like it's the golden age. And it just kind of fits in like that really well. But I did catch one. This is like very niche kind of trivia for me, but this is either an insight into the era that Gotham exists or an error.
Okay.
Probably an error.
Sure.
They say it's one of the actresses wearing a designer's name, like wearing a Chanel or wearing a whatever,
Yeah.
Which can be dated to a very specific period of time, in like the 50s or 60s, I think.
Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that.
I think it actually takes place in like the 30s or 40s, looking at the cars and stuff, which lines up with like Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, I think Batman in the Animated Series even less seriously took the time period because there were like computers and stuff in that show. Mm-hmm. It was more like 40s tinged. And I think similarly, this is not, I get the sense that they were not like trying to make it super hyper ultra realistic. They weren't super, because like one of the critiques online that I saw was like, there's like social anachronisms, like how is Jim Gordon a black man in charge of the police department? It's the 40s. And I was like, it's a cartoon. It's not actually the 40s. It's 40s-ish. It's not the point, right?
Yeah, it's not even this universe, right? It's like a completely different universe, like
mind-blowing, like brain-dead takes. But they did have a lot of technology that was really cool. Flashbulb cameras was one of the things. They had black and white television sets. They had the sort of classic like vacuum tube radios. There was at one point when Bruce is doing research in the Batcave, he's using microfiche, which is the little, basically they take pictures of newspapers, but it's on a slide, and so you have to put it in a machine and shine the light through it to blow it up to read it. The cars look very 1940s.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I really, really liked about Batman in the Animated Series was how like all the cars were 30s and 40s cars, and they like wore over like fedoras and like raincoats, whatever you call it, trench coats and stuff like that, which is like not a modern thing. And this show did the same kind of thing, which I really, really like looking at that. It's a little bit of eye candy, lots of Art Deco style. So like for the audience, that would be like the Chrysler Building is classic Art Deco architecture. They had a lot of stuff like that where it's like got these great hard straight lines, but tons of detail. You know, and I really love it the way it showed up in this show.
One thing I noticed, I don't know if you caught this, was they added film grain.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so it was actually a pretty heavy film grain to all the episodes. And I don't know if you remember, that's something that they did for the Batman, the Matt Reeves movie, where even though it was shot on digital, they printed it out to film and then did a new scan to like get real film grain. I don't think they went that far. But even though this was very clearly digitally produced, they added film grain. I think in the sort of spirit of making it feel sort of noir.
Yeah. I love that detail. I love that stuff. That's great.
Yeah. You know, and the stories and the characters, it's not just old, but it's also like it is noir. It is, you know, Casablanca. Yeah. It is sort
Absolutely.
of the characters are in Batman the Animated Series, and I don't want to take credit for this, by the way. I should say there's a video essayist called Serum Lake who does all kinds of video essays about Batman the Animated Series. I've known about him for a while, and he did a bunch about Cape Crusader. And once I finally finished watching Cape Crusader, I started picking up his essays on that as well. So if you want like a much better, thoughtful like video essay take, he's got like dozens about this. So Serum Lake over on YouTube, I'll drop a link in the description. One of the things that he points out is that in Batman the Animated Series, a lot of the characters are tragic, right? Like we're supposed to feel for them. We're sad for Clayface. We're sad for Two-Face. Yeah. And on this show, it's not that they're not complex, but they're just bad people. Like they're bitter. They're mean spirited. I can't think of a better adjective than that. You know, they make bad choices. And it's not that you don't feel for them or that you don't feel that they have valid motivation, but it's just more somber and dire. And like, it doesn't try to make you feel good necessarily about some of these characters. And it's of that tone, right? So it's not just the technology. It's not just the film grain. It's just a different speed, I think, as a show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that kind of along those lines, like I think that the target audience is older. It's like more 100%. Adults than it is kids. And not to say that it deals with like particularly like adult things, but just like the speed, the pace, like the atmosphere. This was like a much more of a detective Batman than an 100%. Action Batman. Yeah. Which I think lends itself to like an older, more mature mentality. So yeah, I think that lines up perfectly with what you're saying.
Yeah, that was one of another essay I watched was what the critique is like the action's not very good. Like the animation it isn't great during the fighting and there's not much of it. And I was like, well, you know, it's not really the point. Right. it's like it's a lot of character work and a lot of like situational. It's about the politics. It's about the sort of crime and corruption conceptually, not just like punching it, right?
Yeah.
And so, not that I think it's not like gory. It's not like lewd, right? So it's not like I wouldn't show this to a kid. No, but it's not for them, you know.
Right. Yeah. I heard, man, I think it was Hugh Jackman was talking about Logan. And it like this interview like changed the way I look at movies. Yeah. He said that he was just so relieved and excited when they got the green light to do a rated R film. And he was like, because we don't have to aim every shot at the attention span of like a 14-year-old. Right. We could let things take time. We could work with like more complex, mature topics. It doesn't mean it has to like have a ton of cussing and nudity and like blood, but it's just like it allows for like a more mature context in the way that we do the storytelling. And that's kind of how I feel about this is that it doesn't it's not rated R, but it is for like an older audience that can take its time.
It's a thinker. Like this is not a show to like have it on and then be like playing a game on your Steam Deck. This is not like another tab. This is like active watching. You need to be, because they're asking you to think. And if you make the mistake of half watching this, you'll think it's a bad show.
it's like primarily character development. And so like any good show that does character development, if you miss like one thing, you actually kind of miss a pretty big part of the show.
100%. Do you want to talk a little bit about the characters?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. And we'll try to step through them in somewhat chronological, just to kind of get thoughts about the episodes as we're going as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Batman himself is portrayed by Hamish Linklater, who is actually in a ton of stuff. I hadn't heard of him, but once I saw his face, like hadn't heard the name, but once I saw his face, I was like, oh, like he was on the original Fantastic Four in 2004. He was a character on Pushing Daisies. He's a character on Legion, which if you haven't watched that, that's an incredible television show.
I've heard it's really good.
He's in a bunch of stuff. What did you think about this portrayal of Batman?
I thought it was fine. Like I know everyone is gonna compare him to Kevin Conroy.
Yeah, you can't not.
No, yeah, you can't not. But I thought he did a fine job. I think there were some interesting things with the way he like did his voice to be the Batman voice. Like there was one thing that has been kind of consistent in a lot of the stuff we've been learning about, which is Batman is who he is, and then he plays Bruce Wayne when he needs to.
Yeah.
And that like showed up a few times in the show where like he's alone in the car with Alfred, and he's talking like this, you know, and then like he answers the phone or rolls down the window, whatever it is, he's talking to someone, and he's like, oh, hey, how's it going? And like charismatic and Bruce Wayne. And then like as soon as he shuts the door or whatever it is, he's like, okay, step on it, Pennyworth. You know, he's like, his voice changes, and it was a little bit forced because it didn't seem quite as natural. Like, it didn't seem like a natural like Batman voice, but it did bother me.
Yeah, I think definitely at the beginning of the season, he's starting out as that trope of like Batman's the real person and Bruce is the disguise. But I feel like by the end of the season, you almost have 3, which is like Bruce starts to come out of a shell a little bit. Like he spends the entire season calling Alfred Pennyworth, and he doesn't call him Alfred until the very end.
That's true.
And he's kind of a jerk.
He is a total jerk.
Alfred, again, until kind of the end. And so I think there's kind of a separation where you realize that there actually is a sort of like soft Bruce under the shell. And that's the third. So there's the Bruce, the act, there's the real Bruce, and then there's Batman, the act. And like, he's almost like Batman is not just...
interesting.
Yeah, not just a crime fighter, but he's also like the hard shell that he's created a barrier around him because he doesn't want to get hurt again, right? I think is
actually like there's like a very clear line to be drawn between this and the 2022 moving picture film, the Batman.
Yeah,
because like there's the Matt Reeves connection, but also like that Batman was like a total jerk to Alfred until like his life was at risk, and Pattinson was like, actually Alfred, I do like you a lot, you know, like you gotta live, you know, and it's like a very similar thing that happens in this show where he's like being kind of a hard ass, and then he was like, maybe I actually do like this guy, you know, changes his tone.
Some similar themes for sure.
Yeah.
Jim Gordon was played by a guy named Eric Morgan Stewart. He is these 3 are more voice actors than actors. He was a voice actor in a video game that's really famous called Life is Strange. He did appear as a guest on ER. One of the things I noticed when I was looking up a lot of these voice actors is even if they were primarily voice acting, they often had a few acting roles, but it was always as like one-off like guest appearances on ongoing shows. Like they did an episode on General Hospital, or they did like 3 episodes on ER, or they did like 3 episodes on, you know, Buffy or whatever. Like a lot of these people are actors, but they may not have the sort of like big reach like that.
It's probably common, like probably the majority of actors are bit actors, not major players in a show.
Or they might have more success like in voice acting or on the stage or whatever. Like this one, Crystal Joy Brown as Barbara Gordon, her biggest role is playing across Lin-Manuel Miranda in Hamilton.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, exactly. So in the original production on Broadway. So like insanely successful. Yeah. And then Michelle Bonilla, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that, played Montoya, Fallout 76, Dead Rising, Command and Conquer, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Room Woman, Jag, ER, right? Been on a ton of stuff. I really like all of these characters. I love the focus on the sort of like Gotham Central, on the police and the lawyers and their interactions with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting, like picking up on the web between like their intentions and what was going on, and like the way Harvey Dent behaved and how like Barbara interacted with him, because she worked with him pretty closely in the Justice Department or whatever.
Yeah.
And like Commissioner Gordon's take on all that stuff, and I don't know, it's reminiscent because I don't think there was a lot of like new things happening between like the reputation of the police being corrupt, because like the reputation is that like all of Gotham is corrupt.
Yeah.
And then like these kind of shining stars in that corruption of like actually being really good cops and stuff. I thought they were really strong characters and I liked them, but I didn't catch anything like really fresh and new about them.
Right. It's very, very, very prominent in this. And I have to think that I think for Barbara and her both, I wouldn't be surprised if in future seasons of the show, we see them evolve to other characters, Barbara being Batgirl and Renee. I don't know if you're familiar with the character called the Question.
Oh.
Yeah. In the comics, they both have, crime fighting alter egos. So we'll see. But I definitely think, and we'll talk a little bit about it more when we get to the villain of the episode. We got a lot of character development for Barbara not being a cop, not being a librarian, being a lawyer, sort of being a very strong character, is getting involved in all these situations, like with Harley Quinn and with Onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
I think not different than other takes, but different in their prominence. Like they were front and center.
So for the viewer,
Yes.
I watched all of this like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And Alex watched it more recently. So I
did.
think you've got the more current memory on it. But I do remember, now that you're talking about it, it did remind me of how I do think it's more realistic that she would become a lawyer instead of a police officer, because her dad, being a police officer, would be like, don't do this.
Right.
But like still work in justice, just like in a kind of a different part of it. And so like having her be a lawyer did actually strike me as more realistic.
Well, and I loved the tension that they had between each other. There was an episode where they actually have an argument, like about whether people deserve representation, right? Like she's saying everyone, that's my job in the system, and everyone deserves representation, and everyone deserves another chance. And he's saying like, I just locked these people up. Why are you fighting for them, right? It's a very interesting tension where they're on the same side and they're not at the same time.
Right.
It's not black and white.
Yes, yeah, because she's a defense attorney.
That's right. John DiMaggio as Bullock, not to be confused with Joe DiMaggio, but is a famous voice actor. He's Bender in Futurama, Marcus Phoenix in Gears of War. He was in Kim Possible, Final Fantasy X, Teen Titans Go, Jackie Chan Adventures. So very famous actor as Bullock. And then Gary Anthony Williams as Flass. He was on Boston Legal, Malcolm in the Middle. He voice acted in StarCraft 2, XCOM. He's right now on the current reboot of Whose Line Is It Anyway? So that's a thing, apparently. What did you think about Bullock and Flass?
Super corrupt.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say that they weren't very complicated characters. They didn't seem like they had like really complex motivations. It was just like, I like power in the police department and I'm going to do what it takes. They actually like fully set up a case for Firefly to escape.
Firebug, yeah.
And Firebug, right, to escape in like a very like ham-fisted, obvious way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, didn't like them, but they did their jobs as characters.
Yeah, I think they're not the sort of bumbling kind of fools that sometimes you get with Bullock in particular. Like
Bullock in particular, yeah.
kind of a dummy or whatever.
Yeah,
they are just corrupt and evil. I do think that they are three-dimensional in that like they clearly don't necessarily feel when they're making choices. We as the audience know are wrong. It's not that they don't know they're wrong, but they're making them for reasons that feel justified to them, right? They're either doing something on behalf of the police department or behalf of themselves. They're not necessarily like, they aren't like Rupert Thorne's goons, right? They don't work for him. They are cops.
That's true.
And they believe that the cops are doing good things and are worthwhile, right? But they're just like, you could definitely see how someone could convince themselves that what they're doing is okay, even though they know it's wrong, right?
That's a good point. That's fair. Like for instance, when they let Firebug go, it was so they could catch Batman.
That's right. 100%.
Right. And there were cases like, they were like this, they're doing things that were like entrapment, but they were like, but but I'm catching the bad guys.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yeah.
So they're like bad cops, but they're not like
on the pay,
mustache twirling. Right. Yeah. And they're not on the take. There's also, there was a villain at some point that turned them against each other. I thought that was like a really cool moment. They just have some really interesting dynamics. Cedric Yarbaugh, I don't know how to pronounce that, played Rupert Thorne. He's Deputy Jones on Reno 911.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, he also voice acted on BoJack Horseman and in the Boondocks, big famous voice actor. He doesn't get a lot of screen time, but he's on almost every episode of the show. Believe it or not, he's throughout the entire series. And his primary deal is he is courting Harvey Dent. And so when we talk more about Harvey Dent, like his dynamic's really important. But I don't know if you have any thoughts about this character or the performance before we do that.
The performance was believable. It was fine. Like I didn't notice anything strange there. I thought that this was a pretty smart take on how organized crime would work. Like it actually kind of reminded me of some stuff I saw in like House of Cards when they're like, well, if you want this good thing to happen,
100%.
you have to do this other thing for me, you know?
Yes.
And it really starts to blur the line to where the person who's supposed to be uncorruptible starts to see the other side and they're like, well, if I can do this one bad thing, then I get all these good things.
Yes.
You know, and it's not necessarily money. It's like access or power or like if I can let this one guy go, then I can take down this other guy.
Yes.
You know,
it was just like we were talking about with Bullock and Flass. The corruption is not like some of the simple morality tales we get with Batman where someone's like blackmailed or they just decide that they're self-interested. It's right. It's like they're presented decisions that are tough, right? And they may feel, they may be able to rationalize to themselves that what they're doing is right, not just right for themselves, but like right broadly. Like they may be doing something that it's the trolley problem, right? It's it's I'm going to throw the switch to like hurt the one person, but save the 50, right? That they're being moral by being evil, right? And Thorne is the sort of like change agent for that. He's the catalyst. It's not that he wants, you know, Two-Face to be his goon. It's not that he wants Bullock and Flass to be on the take. It's that he wants to use them to achieve, you know, ends. And so
community.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's transactional.
Yeah.
Minnie Driver as the Penguin. She's famous. Good Will Hunting. She got nominated for Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress or something like that for that. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about this representation of the Penguin. I'll be honest with you. Since this was episode number 1, it's like the furthest in my memory. This is probably like 3 or 4 weeks ago. Like I don't 100% remember, but
this one I watched twice.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely ruthless. Like total lizard brain. I will step on heads to do what I need to get ahead. I did think it was kind of interesting because one thing about the Penguin is that classically they're like wealthy. And people are just like, yeah, that's okay. They do bad things, but like they're one of us because they have a lot of money. And this kind of fit that, but the outfit didn't match up with what I would expect for like a female penguin. That's the only thing that kind of bugged me is it was like penguin suit, but top hat didn't quite fit.
Sure.
Performing artist. That actually I thought was a really good touch. But then total crime lord. In like the weird corrupt, I don't know how to describe it, but like in the classic Batman villain kind of way, but like willing to kill her children.
Sure, yeah.
You know, like really, really lizard brain.
Yeah, totally.
One thing about Penguin that I did find interesting is that she makes a comment. She talks about Batman and describes... No, excuse me, backwards. Batman is talking about Penguin and saying that she hides in plain sight, and that's ingenious. Yeah. And I thought that was really funny because that's exactly what Batman does.
Yes.
Right? And there was like a mirror reflection there that Batman like unknowingly references. Yeah. Which I was very on the nose, but I liked it.
Sure.
And
implying like a lack of self-awareness or whatever. Like Yeah.
But it was like, I don't know. It's self-aggrandizing a little bit, unintentionally so, to be like, oh, she's doing this thing and that's ingenious. Yeah. But that's what he's doing. Yeah. So it's like in a way, in like a circular way, he's calling himself ingenious unintentionally. It's just funny to me.
Yeah. And we definitely get the sense that like this is very early. Like it doesn't start with the origin of Batman at the beginning of the show, but like we'll see here in a couple slides, like they're implying that like Batman's just showing up on the scene for the first time as well. So this is supposed to be he's just starting to be a hero for sure.
Yeah, I don't remember any specific quotes on that, but I want to say Alfred is like, oh, doing this again, are you? Or something like that to imply it's like brand new.
Yeah, exactly. Oh no, I don't have notes on this person. Give me 1 second.
Oh, I have notes on this person. And it's funny because this is your favorite.
No, I meant the actor. It's Dan Donahue.
Ah.
Whoever that is. He's on he's on For All Mankind and Longmire and Strange Angel. A big actor. A voice actor as well. Horizon Forbidden West, The Elder Scrolls Online, Call of Duty Vanguard. Dan Donahue, Clayface.
Yeah. I thought this was a really interesting character because it was it mirrored very closely the Clayface that we talked about in the Golden Age.
Golden Age first appearance, yeah.
I did think it was really interesting because it's, what's that guy's name? Basil Karloff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he looks just like Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
Like, exactly like Boris Karloff. And it's funny because they've got the same name.
Yeah.
Or
similar names,
similar names. And Basil Karloff, who is Clayface, is doing a lot of the same roles that Boris Karloff did. Like he was in a lot of scary movies and stuff like that.
Like Hunchback of Notre Dame and stuff like that.
Yeah. And The Mummy and Frankenstein. I don't remember what all, but and very famously for Frankenstein, I think. So, I mean, I thought this was actually a really interesting episode because it followed the comics so closely.
Well, so in terms of story, it's actually not that close because in the comic, he doesn't undergo a procedure. There's no like changing his appearance. He's just putting clay on his face. I don't know if you remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, when I did the research for that one, I saw the origin for like 5 different Clayfaces.
Yeah. So the Golden Age Clayface, the deal is that he was a famous actor. They're remaking one of his movies, and he's upset that he's not being recast in the remake.
Oh, and so right, they ended up like pulling it off his face, right?
And it's just clay. Yeah, it's just a guy.
Yeah, you're right. It's just clay.
Yeah, so he's not supernatural at all or paranormal or superpowered. It's not, but in terms of like visuals, like this where he's dressed like the Shadow and it's all black and he's got the red scarf over his face, that's 100% Golden Age.
Yes.
The sort of like Hollywood theme is 100% Golden Age. So like a lot of like the visual and thematic elements, it is more like that first appearance than anything else. I will say story elements a little bit different, but this was the first episode where I was, and it's only episode 2, right? Yeah, episode 2. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in. Like the show, this is great. Like I'm having a good time. Yeah,
yeah.
I was really impressed. So Catwoman. Any guesses who played Catwoman?
Zoe, what's her face? I don't know.
This is Christina Ricci, who was Wednesday Addams in the Addams Family in the 90s. She was the little girl in Casper.
She's awesome.
Yeah, later did Ally McBeal, Grey's Anatomy.
She's awesome.
Yeah, she is. Just like with Clayface, Golden Age, she is wearing 100% her costume. Not her very first costume. She's not wearing the cat face. But like, I think it was by her 3rd or 4th appearance, this is what she looks like.
Very early,
and looks like this for the rest of the Golden Age.
Yeah.
Likewise, at one point, she has a Catmobile with the cat on the front. That's another thing they did in the Golden Age. They're very much drawing from her Golden Age sort of style visually.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's awesome. I also think it's tiny details.
Yeah,
like the choker necklace that it looks like a cat collar.
Yeah.
It's like right on it.
Another thing that I really, really liked about this version of Catwoman is that she's inspired by Batman. So her origin in the show is she's seeing, Batman out and in a costume and doing things, and she decides she's going to do it too, which is really neat. I like that Bruce and Selina meet before she ever puts on the costume and they know each other, right? It's really a really, really great version of Catwoman.
Yeah, I mean, this Selina Kyle is a rich daughter of an organized crime leader. So like I think that there's also like a mirror there of like Bruce Wayne is like a rich child and she was a rich child, you know, it's just like different means. And like, I'm kind of curious if in the next season they would play with the idea of kind of like what we saw with Batman Forever, Chase Meridian, where like she fell in love with Bruce Wayne and also fell in love with Batman and was like, who do I pick? Until she kind of figured out it's the same guy.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think they could do something kind of interesting here where she falls in love with the rich Bruce Wayne that she actually realistically could bump elbows with. And then at night does the chasing scenes with Batman and like kind of becomes intertwined that way as well. Especially because Catwoman like historically has been like morally ambiguous. You know, not so morally ambiguous here, but like there's still time.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the stronger characters of the whole series for sure.
Yeah, I agree.
On this episode number 3 or 4, whatever it is, the Catwoman episode, we had this scene that you wanted to talk about. We also see the flashback to the alley. So this is the first time in the series we're dealing with the origin of Bruce and Batman at all.
This was interesting because Bruce Wayne, as a small child, like we know this from Golden Age, like it's right after Crime Alley and stuff. He's like, I will avenge all crime or whatever. But like, this is like, he's possessed. Like something took him over. He walks in and poor Alfred is like, he's dealing with kind of the fallout of this tragedy.
Right.
And then this kid with eyes wide, like fully possessed is like,
yeah, well, he just had a nightmare about the shooting in the alley. Like he's reliving it. He's woken up in the middle of the night. He's walked to Alfred's room and
and he opens the door and he's like, I'm going to get them. I'm going to make them pay.
I think he says we're going to make them pay or whatever.
And he's like, and you're going to help me.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
And Alfred's just like, what the fuck did I just see? You know, and Alfred Bruce Wayne just goes back to bed. It's like, it's crazy. Like, it was really funny to me. I was like laughing out loud at how like ridiculous Alfred must have, like that whole scene for Alfred was, you know.
Their facial expressions are pretty wild. Like Bruce does look like he's possessed almost. Like it's vacant stare. And like Alfred is like concerned, like for himself, for Bruce, for everything. He's like, what's happening? Yeah.
Oh, too funny.
Alfred, played by a man named Jason Watkins. In America, he's probably best known for appearing on The Crown. But he's actually a really big British actor. He won the BAFTA for Best Actor for a show called The Lost Honor of Christopher Jeffries. Don't know anything about it. Probably was a BBC show or something like that. But he's a big deal.
That's cool.
And like you were saying earlier, this Alfred is kind of a cross between modern Alfred and Golden Age Alfred. So he's got the cul-de-sac and the mustache, which is modern Alfred. But he's portly, right?
And he's younger.
Yeah, and he's younger, which is Golden Age Alfred, which is really interesting to me. He's not kind of like a bumbling fool. He's not a punchline like Golden Age Alfred, but he's not a father figure like modern Alfred, right? He's kind of a vehicle for which, Bruce to get his things done, and Bruce holds him at arm's length. So very interesting character. I think absolutely when there's a season 2, there's going to be evolution here. I can't wait to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Very happy with Alfred.
I was really happy that they did not make him a bubbling fool like we saw, because I think that would have upset a lot of people, and I think that when they've done that with characters, it just strikes as like super disrespectful to me, and I don't like it. So I'm glad they didn't do that, but I did think it was really fun that they made him a younger Alfred.
Yeah. They definitely. I don't think they could have gone full Golden Age, but they went as far as they could for sure.
Yeah.
Tom Kenny, who's a famous voice actor, Rocko's Modern Life, Powerpuff Girls, Johnny Bravo, as Firebug. Notably not Firefly, which he is sometimes called. Firebug doesn't have wings, can't fly, but same character, basically. They kind of head faked us on this, where he was kind of the villain of the episode, but not really. This actually ended up being
just
a lot
for like
about...
a minute.
Yeah.
About
sort of Rupert Thorne again, and the corruption, Bullock and Flass, and all those sorts of things, so...
This episode, this is what I was referring to earlier, where like Bullock and Flass like kind of were like, man, it'd be really, we're transporting this guy, like, man, it'd be really terrible if like something happened and he like found all of his stuff in the trunk, you know?
Yeah.
Then they like set up the situation where he gets it, and and I think it was kind of weird that he just like went into somebody's garage and was like, these are flammable, and like, and like made his stuff work. But he was like a bad guy for like a hot minute. Yeah. Like very short amount of time. He lit, I think, like a tenement on fire.
Yeah.
And this was an interesting episode because it was where Batman proved that he was a good guy.
Right. Because Gordon is going after him at the beginning of the episode. They're trying to get Batman. Yeah.
And they end up in this in the flames building. At the same time, in the burning building, and Batman's like holding this kid,
children,
yeah, and Gordon's in the same situation.
They don't even say anything. They just look at each other. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's interesting to think what they're like, to imagine what they're thinking, where like Batman is like, oh, this is awkward. You know?
Are you going to stop me? You know?
Yeah. Whereas like, Commissioner Gordon is like, shit. It's just like, I can't imagine what's going on in their head, the conflict, and they're like, well, gotta save these kids. That's obviously the priority.
It speaks to both of their characters. It says, you know, we could fight or we could save these kids, and they both choose to save the kids, right? Mm-hmm. Very cool moment for sure. Stuck with me. Definitely. Also on this episode, we are learning more about yes, I'll let you talk about it. We're learning about the fact that like Harvey Dent is losing the mayoral race, right? Yeah. And part of the reason is it seems like the crime's out of control. He's the DA. How could he be mayor if he's, you know, letting all this stuff happen? Which doesn't make a ton of sense, but like
what you can see on the screen here is they've got the hyphenated Batman. Dash Man.
Yeah.
Just like the Golden Age did for a long time. And it's another one of those like little nuggets, those little trivia things that like I think this is really tastefully done. Like I don't like it when shows like slather on like the fan what do you call it? Fan service. Fan service.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff where they just like drop the little nuggets and you get to pick them up and go, woohoo, you know? And this is that kind of stuff. I thought it was fun. This fun little details.
Yeah. And there's a cool symmetry that like the way that people were introduced to the fiction of Batman in the real world, Bat-Man, is the same way that the populace in the fictional world are introduced to Batman for the first time, right?
Yeah.
Another head fake episode. I got so excited. I was like, it's King Tut. There's gonna be an episode about King Tut. I was like, yes. I just couldn't believe it. King Tut, character that was created for Batman 66, the live action show, did not come from the comics. And for whatever reason, I just love the Egyptomania. It's so cool. But the episode is not about King Tut. He's very briefly, it turns out that he's just happens to be a patient of one Harleen Quinzel, who is actually the villain of this episode, played by Jamie Chung, who, this is a really interesting one. She was in the 90s a contestant on The Real World, and that's how she became famous, but then would go on to become an actress. So she's in Lovecraft Country, Once Upon a Time, which is an ABC like Disney show. She was in Dragon Ball Evolution, which is the live action Dragon Ball we don't talk about.
Wow.
And a bunch of stuff like that, playing Harley Quinn.
So I'm drawing a line really quickly to what you said earlier.
Yeah.
Bruce Timm created Harley Quinn.
He did.
In Batman the Animated Series is connected to this.
Yes.
And this is Harley with no Joker.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Very different take.
I thought that was really cool. Yeah. I also really love, there's like, if you're not listening, you miss it. But Harley says, oh yeah, my old college professor, Dr. Crane. So her old professor. I didn't guess that. Is Scarecrow.
I love that.
Which I loved that. I thought that was so tricky and so clever.
Yeah.
Also, there's like a reversal here in the Harley Quinn behavior that her as a psychiatrist or psychologist, I don't remember, is like bubbly and friendly and like etc. like gregarious. And then when she's like Harley Quinn, the villain or whatever, is like almost doesn't talk at all, porcelain doll like, and just like
angry,
intense. Which is like a total reverse on what we usually see with Harley Quinn.
This character, I wasn't 100% sure on the motivation. Like she's like donating, so she captures rich people, she locks them up, she's like psychologically torturing them. I get that she kind of enjoys that, right? Because she's a psychiatrist and she like gets into people's heads. So that makes sense to me, right? If you're just like, it's like, you know, they're at the bottom of the well, they put the lotion on the skin, right? It's like, they're just crazy. Like there doesn't need to be an explanation. But then they try to like lay on this other layer where she's like getting the rich people that she captures to like donate all their money for some reason. Like it's like a redistribution of wealth thing. It doesn't flesh it out very well, I don't think.
Yeah. So I took her motivation to be like not from wealth.
Sure.
works in this area where predominantly works with wealthy people, like hearing them like whine about
talk
things
about their problems that aren't real problems.
Right. And like you hear the way she talks to Bruce Wayne. That
makes sense. Yeah.
Where she's like, no, I think you need to stay here. I think she's like she's Black Widowing, like trying to pull them into her net. And then she has this opportunity to be like, well, now I get to make them suffer and I get to use their money in the right way because they're awful people. You know?
No, that's a fair point. That makes sense to me. I guess it didn't click for me for whatever reason in the moment. Cause it is 100% like Bruce is coming in and she's like, you know, you don't have real problems basically.
Yeah. But it was also funny that he was like, no, I'm good. Time to go. And she's like, no, I think you have some really serious problems and we've made no progress at all. Like, it's funny because she like cuts the facade and suddenly is like very serious with him about like, you were faking all of this.
Yeah.
There's something seriously psychologically wrong with you. And I think we need more time. Yeah. And Bruce Wayne is like, oh, that's so funny. Like, just like water off a duck's back. Like, oh, funny you say that. Yeah. No, I'm feeling great. Everything's good. See ya, you know, and just goes. And there's like a really interesting tension there. Like specifically when he's like, I'm done and I'm out of here. That I really enjoyed.
Yeah. No, that's a perspective I didn't, for whatever reason didn't stick with me, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
One thing that I do remember, that I thought was done very, very well in this episode was the sort of like friendship romance relationship. So
yes,
Harleen and Montoya have kind of a romantic relationship. Barbara is friends with both of them.
Yes.
And Montoya is kind of blind, I guess, to the fact that something's not quite right with Harley. And Barbara wants to be a good friend to both of them, but can tell everything's not okay. Everything's not quite right. And so she ends up intervening and like is going and like finds the dungeon where Harley's like torturing these people and kind of rips apart her friend's relationship and feels bad about it. Cause like you can tell she's friends with Harley too. And so there's this like complicated dynamic of like friends and relationships and just like very, very, very well put together. I was a big fan of that.
Yeah. No, I agree that it's like not quite a love triangle.
No, it was more love friendship triangle thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like fully a triangle, but like the three of them and like the way that interlaced in the conflict that it created. Like again, like one of those things that like I think only really adults could understand well. You know,
and it doesn't have a sort of like moral resolution that's easy and nice and tidy and everyone feels good about. It's somber. Like it's at the end you feel like this sucks for everyone, right? And in so many ways, this show is about complicated situations that just kind of suck for everybody, right?
Yeah,
more realistic in that way. But Gentleman Ghost, I was thrilled with this one too. Oh my gosh, we're doing deep cuts now. Like we started out with like Catwoman and Clayface and all the stuff that people expect. Now we're getting that like King Tut, Gentleman Ghost. Are you kidding? I love it. It's so good. This is played by Toby Stephens, who is the main villain in Die Another Day. He is also a big actor.
No kidding.
Yes.
the Korean guy or the British guy?
The British guy.
British guy? Okay.
Yeah. He's one of the main actors on the Lost in Space reboot, the 2018 Netflix TV show. He was most recently in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Big time actor playing Gentleman Ghost. What did you think about this episode?
So I really liked this episode. It was weird because it was an episode of X-Files. Or like Supernatural or something, right? But it also like very clearly lets you know this stuff exists in this universe, right? Like because like you could explain away a bunch of other stuff magic wise, because you could be like, oh yeah, Clayface, it's chemicals, that's science, you know, but this is like crossing the threshold, you know, like. And I really liked that. Like they were just like, this is real. It's Scooby-Doo, you know? And this is great. Yeah.
And your journey of like, are they going to do Supernatural? Aren't they going to do Supernatural? Is the journey that Bruce is going on. He goes into the episode thinking, there's no way, this isn't a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we end the episode, they're literally doing like a spell. Like there's a ritual where they're like burning a piece of paper to like banish him. Right?
Yeah.
Very cool. This is the episode written by Mark Bernardin, who is the co-host on Fat Man and Batman. And I just love everything about it. It's just like, Scooby-Doo. It's pulpy. It's supernatural. It's like,
and it starts like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
like the whole like first 5 minutes is like, is this Scooby-Doo? Like everything about it was Scooby-Doo.
The vibe, the tone, and it's a deep cut, right? This is a Batman villain that I don't know that I've ever seen in another medium besides the comics.
I've never heard of this person.
Yeah, right. And I love that, right? Like, you know, one of the critiques that I wonder if it's because I have been trying to steep myself in this stuff, and I am like doing research about these things and like trying to learn, that it seems it plays as fan service for me, because I did see some reviews where people were like, one of the things they didn't like about the show was that they made so many new original characters. And I'm like, none of these characters are original. There's not a single character in this whole show that I'm aware of that's an original character. Every one of these comes from the comics or some other medium, like King Tut comes from Batman 66. But like people are upset that they're not getting the characters they know.
I'll be honest, like that argument just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, why wouldn't you want new things? Why would you want the same thing in a different style? Like it's just new things. And that's one of the reasons we're doing Absolute Batman is it's just like a fresh take, and you have no idea what's going to happen. And I think that's way more fun than just doing the same stuff you've done before.
You know, I do like when you get something and it's like, we're going to do a romp. There is something that's nice about an old pair of jeans where you're getting exactly what you wanted. But, you know, that was one of my concerns with the show, Bruce Timm show running it again, was like, it's just going to be more Batman the Animated Series, but everyone's 20 years older, and like it feels like beating a dead horse. And 100% it's not, right? They're doing their own thing. They're doing new stuff, new takes that's still respectful for the material. Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page, because this is so great. Onomatopoeia. Have you ever heard of Onomatopoeia?
I don't know if I've heard of them, but they look really familiar. Like I think I've seen that before.
It doesn't, you know, you might be thinking of the villain from the latest Spider-Man movie. That's like the Spot or whatever, or the Question kind of looks like this, or Rorschach kind of looks like this.
The Question does look like this. You're right.
Yeah. But Onomatopoeia is a relatively new, I think 90s or early 2000s creation. Kevin Smith created Onomatopoeia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
In the 90s, he wrote a bunch of comic books. They brought him in, and that was kind of the big deal, was like, we didn't get the comic books writers going to Hollywood, but one of the things we started to get was Hollywood writers coming to comic books. And he created Onomatopoeia for a Green Arrow run that he was doing. He was the main writer on Green Arrow for an extended period of time, and this was a villain he created for him. And I believe later, when Kevin Smith would go on to write Batman, he would have Onomatopoeia face it off after him.
Who did we just cover? Oh, it was Clayface, right? Clayface was originally Green Lantern. No, not Clayface.
It was
Born on a Monday.
Solomon Grundy was Green Lantern. Yes,
was Green Lantern. Yeah, yes. So that's kind of interesting that started in a different, I mean, same universe, but like different show.
Did you understand the gimmick?
I don't know.
So
what was the gimmick?
The gimmick is that he doesn't talk. He makes onomatopoeias. Blam, snap.
Oh,
like there's a point in the
didn't get that.
There's a point in the episode where they're running. So the context of this episode, right, is Onomatopoeia and a bunch of thugs are following Jim Gordon. There's been a hit taken out on him, or at least we think it's Jim Gordon. At the end, there's a twist on someone else, but and they're tracking him and they're running. Like they were going to take him to a safe house, but they were tracked anyway. And there's a part. A sequence where the car wrecks, right, and then it's like leaking oil, and they push it behind a billboard, and Onomatopoeia and all the goons are like tracking it, and he comes up and he finds the oil on the ground, and he goes drip 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 drip, right, because he only talks in sounds. That's funny. In onomatopoeias.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that totally went over my head.
Yes. Honestly, they don't explain it. They just do
everything you just described. I don't remember that happening.
Go back and watch it, because it's the ultimate fan service. It's so cool. You're like, they're doing it.
Yeah.
Because famously, like, people have said that it's an unadaptable character. You cannot adapt this character because all he does is speak onomatopoeias. And when in comics, you're reading it, so you're reading but he's saying it. So
yeah.
Very cool. I love this episode. Reed Scott is the person who's playing Onomatopoeia. He's on Veep, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Law and Order. He was in the Venom movie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Famous actor. All he does is drip, 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 and snap, and bam, and like pow. They got a really famous person to say like 5 words or whatever.
I love that.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like Deadpool.
Yeah.
And how he got Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
To be the invisible person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think this is the episode where they're teeing up Barbara Gordon to be Batgirl, because the twist at the end of the episode is that the hit is not out on Jim. It's out on Barbara.
Yes.
Right.
I remember this. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because it's someone who is upset that she didn't get him a good enough deal. Right. And this is also the episode where Jim and Barbara are fighting about like whether what she does is worthwhile. Like he's like, I did all this work. We're fighting to clean up the streets. We're trying to lock people up, and you're trying to reduce people's sentences. You're trying to like, and they're going up against each other. And there's this moment at the end where she has a gut check because she's so certain and strong in her convictions. And then she kind of sees it from her father's perspective, because this person that she fought so hard for to reduce his sentence, got him the best deal he could, tries to get her killed. Right. Mm-hmm. And she definitely has like this moment of self-doubt and like soul searching and like, am I doing the right thing? Is this the best way? Right. 100%. That's gotta be, I mean, they're doing the motivational threads for her to be Batgirl. Those are,
you're drawing some lines that is like legitimately blowing my mind. Like I'm rethinking the Batman universe a little bit because the like meta, description of like what Gotham is the system doesn't work. Right. Like the cops are corrupt, you know, and even when they're trying to do the right thing, they just want to throw people in jail. Right. You got the district attorney who's trying to get people, and he's the white knight or whatever. And then he flips, he's got his split personality, becomes Two-Face, becomes a criminal. Yeah. Like there's all the criminals there, and the only one in all of the stuff who like really walks the line of like morally uncorruptible is Batman. Yeah. Even when he shows up in like the Justice League and stuff, like he makes the backup plan for all of the other members of the Justice League, just in case because the system doesn't work. You know? And so like Barbara Gordon's moment here where she's like, oh, the system doesn't work, is she's trying to get this person a deal and still gets in trouble for it, and she's like throws up her hands and is like, I gotta do what Batman's doing. Right.
Well, and I don't think that's supposed to necessarily be satisfying. I don't think that's, again, like with all of these, that's not a feel good. Like, no, if you think about it in the real world, that's someone learning the wrong moral lesson, right?
Yes.
Again, this is somber a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So it's very, I wish I could take credit. I'm glad I'm unlocking these threads for you. It's 100% the thematic content of this. I didn't write it. Thank Bruce Timm and whoever else, you know, all the people who write this. But easily, this is my favorite episode of the whole thing. And it's because, you know, we're building those threads. We're examining the Batman universe. We're building her out. And like, she just gets to be a badass. Like at the end, like they're you know, fighting in the house. And like, you can see her, like, she's not Batgirl. She's not been trained. She's not, you know, she is just a lawyer, but like she's got the grit, right? Like she's going up against people with guns with her bare hands, right? And it doesn't go well for her all the time. I think at the end, like her coworker rescues her before he turns. Like that's the big reveal at the end of the episode, is that he wants the hit money, right? And Jim ends up shooting the coworker, right? Yeah. So like it's not like she gets herself out of the situation, but she shows the determination and the drive and the like fearlessness. And so
capability.
Yeah. There's so many great threads. Like her transition and transformation to Batgirl, if they get to do it, will be so satisfying. I can't wait. And they didn't really lay a lot of threads, although we'll talk a little bit more about it here in a second for a Robin. I think it's clear to me that they're going to do Batgirl first.
Yeah. Oh, so. Yeah. No, yeah. Robin, you're going to have to remind me the Robin part, because I do have a note.
It's in like, 2 slides.
Okay. But
tell me your note though. Like, what is your thought about Robin?
No. Like I wrote a note of like, there's going to be a Robin, and that's it. But I don't remember who it is. I don't remember how they reference it. I have a note here that says there will be Robin. Like,
I'm not sure that there will be, but we'll see.
Okay.
Next episode here.
This was a fun one.
Was Nocturna. Yeah. So another villain, deep cut. This one's from the 80s.
Magic. Not just supernatural.
Another
full magic.
Yeah. So the person who plays Nocturna is McKenna Grace from I, Tonya and Captain Marvel and Handmaid's Tale and Ghostbusters Afterlife and Frozen Empire. And guess who plays Anton? Her brother. It's Haley Joel Osment.
No kidding. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's so good.
Yeah. He's like a tertiary character. He has like 3 lines of the whole show. They got the Sixth Sense kid to come be on this episode.
That's so good.
It's fantastic.
He's come back to acting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's been really fun to see him. Yeah.
This is another really, really satisfying episode because this is the episode where Harvey Dent gets the deal with the devil. Like he's talked to Rupert Thorne a couple times. He's like canoodling a little bit, like maybe.
Yep.
But this is the one where he has the briefcase full of cash and he says, I'm going to help you win this election. And Harvey gets weak and he says, okay, I'm going to do it. Right. And so he takes the money. That's happening in the context. And it's also happening where there's these orphans, there's these kids that get lost at the carnival. And Leslie Tompkins asks him for help. And he's so worried about his deal that he brushes her off. Right. We see him being evil, right? And self-interested and like kind of a jerk, right? At the end, realizing that he was and like coming back to Tompkins and like wanting to do the right thing, but it's like too little too late.
Yeah.
Again, just a cool supernatural element. And Batman not just punching evil in the face, but like helping this little girl realize that she's hurting other people, right? It's like a cool emotional moment. So there's so many great emotional beats for lots of characters on this episode. The kids, and sorry, go ahead. Do you want to talk about something before we go on?
We'll get to it.
Okay. Leslie Tompkins, are you familiar with that character?
No.
Very important character in the comic books. She's a doctor. She is the yin to Batman's yang in the 90s, and she's always like questioning his morality, right? And fixing up all the villains, right? She's like, looking out for people on the street, working in the homeless shelter, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Batman is constantly having these deep conversations with her. Like he wants to help her, she wants to help him, but she's trying to tell him, you're doing this the wrong way. You're punching evil in the face. In this universe, she's running an orphanage, which is pretty cool. The 4 kids here. Did you catch the names of these 4 kids? Oh. So they're talking to each other throughout the episode. They're the ones who get lost, right?
Okay.
They are Dick, Jason, Tim, and Steph.
Oh.
So these are the Robins.
Got it. No, I didn't catch that at all.
Yes.
I wonder what my note was about.
That's what they're calling each other. I don't think they're saying and these are going to become Batman's Robins in a future episode. I think this might just be a wink and a nudge of like, hey, they're named like the Robins. I don't know, but
I like it's just like Absolute Batman. I love the idea that they introduce these people and then don't do what we expect.
Yeah. Right? They may never do anything with him again. Like, who knows? Mm-hmm. How many seasons we're going to get? I don't know. It's been renewed for 1 more season. We might only get 2. We got 10 more episodes. Are we coming back to these kids? Probably not. I don't know. But like, if they did, like if we get 6 seasons of the show, like maybe. I love that they're orphans. They're all orphans. I love that Batman saves them, right? And they have that relationship. I love that they're standing up to, Nocturna and Anton. It's just a cool moment. So
yeah.
I've talked a lot about this episode, but I should let you talk.
So I will say that one of my favorite TV shows is Supernatural, and like a trope that you see in movies and stuff like that, but shows them in Supernatural like more than one time. Yeah, is they're at a circus or a carnival or something like that, and like something really creepy happens. Yeah, and it turns out to be like kind of sort of what you expect, like it's a clown or something like that. And I thought that this was a really good twist that it was like another kid. Yeah. Right? Like, I thought that was totally unexpected. You know, I mean, you probably knew it was coming because you knew the name or something. But
no, I was not familiar with Nocturna, by the way. This is a deep cut that I'm not familiar with, but all
right. But I thought that was like a really good twist of like kids go missing and you're like, oh, okay. So like some evil circus clown or something in the maze room is taking kids or something like that, and it was like not that at all. And I thought that was really interesting, and also like her brother or something like that. It was Anton's maybe it was the scientist. Yeah. I'm trying to think of like what the setup was, but there was this situation where like you're not supposed to do this. Like you said you weren't going to do this anymore.
Yeah, it's the older brother Anton.
Okay.
And she ends up killing him.
Older brother. That's right. Yes. Older brother. There was like this necessary evil part of it for him where he was like, I want my sister to live, but like not at the cost of these other people. Right. And like she was starting to get out of hand and he was like, oh no. Which is also like a pretty classic trope. And then he didn't make it because of that.
Yeah. No, very, very good episode. At the very end, right? After Harvey Dent has taken the money, there's the moment comes where he's supposed to do the quid pro quo. What Rupert Thorne has asked him to do is just drop the charges on this gangster named Matt Milligan. And so he's supposed to let him go. And we cut to this hearing, not the trial, the hearing in the courtroom. And this is the moment where he's supposed to let the gangster go. And instead he says, actually, we're keeping the charges and we want him imprisoned. Right. So he doubles back and he does the right thing. So he crosses Thorne. He takes the money, saying he's going to, do the corrupt thing. Yeah. And then has the sort of, stroke of conscience or whatever, and lets him go. I wanted to talk about this, and I brought this slide because Matt Milligan, another famous person, the person who voiced this is Song-Won Cho, or better known as ProZD. I don't know if you know who that is. He's an internet celebrity. He's the best.
Hey, it's nice to meet you.
This world is imperfect.
What?
If only I could wipe away the impurities.
Is anybody else listening to this?
Make it as beautiful as me.
Lysandaroth, you were behind all this?
Yes, it was I. My machinations lay undetected for years. For I'm a master of deception.
He's got a really good voice.
He's a very, very talented and successful voice actor, independent of his YouTube.
Yeah.
And then, we spent the last 2 episodes with Two-Face, who is played by Dietrich Bader, who I don't know if you're familiar with who that is. He's one of the main characters on the Drew Carey Show. He's one of the recurring people on Whose Line Is It Anyway? He's the neighbor in Office Space.
Okay, I'm going to look him up.
What would you do if you had $1 million? That guy? Veep.
Huh. Okay, I recognize him. I will say I'm way better with faces than names.
Sure.
So I do have another tab where I'm trying to look at these faces and be like, do I know who this person is?
Super famous.
I'm really bad with names.
Super funny guy. Something that is relevant to him and Batman specifically, so relevant to us, is that the 2008 cartoon Batman Brave and the Bold, he plays Batman. So he's not new to this universe at all. Yeah.
That's really fun.
And I think he did a great job with Two-Face. A really great voice actor. Yeah.
Totally. I'm one of the most on point characters or like voice acting jobs in the whole show.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a great, absolutely, like perfectly what I expected the voice for that face to be like.
Yeah.
It fit in very well. That did a great job. Mm-hmm.
And Two-Face is the culmination of the series, right? So he has little breadcrumbs throughout, and then the last 2 episodes are just him.
So I did think it was interesting as a character that they kind of made Harvey Dent a jackass. Because usually they have the whole like Harvey Dent is incorruptible, does the right thing, like yada yada, and then they'll have like the split personality like kind of pop up like from Batman the Animated Series, and then something happens where like this where like the full split happens, and then you end up like classic Two-Face. This was different because he was like already kind of borderline. At the beginning, where he was giving Barbara Gordon, a hard time about how he won a lot of his cases over her, and acted like the important thing was the resume. Like, I'm winning this, and that's good for me, not where I'm doing this stuff, and it's good for the community, or it's good for the people involved, or for justice, or whatever. Like, he seemed really, really self-centered to begin with, which was kind of an odd take for Harvey Dent. But then you start to see as the show goes on, like where he isn't showing the face that is true, right? And it does get back to some of those other things where people like behind his back would say he was two-faced, and because like Barbara Gordon was like, you're a terrible person, because he did that whole like heads this, tails that, like heads I'll give him life, tails I'll give him the death penalty. And she was like, I just like in The Dark Knight, I don't know why you would leave a person's fate to the flip of a coin, and it's like it doesn't reveal to her but reveals to the audience like it's a two-headed coin,
right?
But it is like he's showing a certain face in that situation that doesn't necessarily match his intentions.
He enjoys the messing with people's heads, right? Like that he's he wants them to feel manipulated or scared, or that there's chance, that there's randomness where there's not.
Yeah, I mean, a little like psychopathic in the like I'm acting a certain way that doesn't necessarily match like what's going on inside.
Yeah, no, I think really, really great character. I think, like you were saying, he's not tragic, right? He is probably ultimately a bad person the whole time. It's not like he was a good person that became bad. He's rationalizing with himself. He thinks he's doing the right thing. He does at an important juncture make a good choice that he's not going to do things on behalf of the gangster, on behalf of Rupert Thorne. But it's not a redemption. It's too late. He took the money. He's in a way martyred himself. So it is not. We don't feel for him the same way we do when you have the incorruptible Harvey Dent, who is a good person that becomes bad, right? He's kind of a bad person the whole time, right?
Right.
Who is in conflict with himself, and it's complicated. It's like we were saying for all of these, it's more somber. Like it's not a feel good morality tale. It's like we see this bad person make some bad choices and like get himself into a pretty bad situation. When he has the Two-Face sort of element where because he does kind of have split personality, but it's not after he gets hit with the acid. It's not between like the incorruptible Harvey Dent and an evil Harvey Dent. He's always evil. It's just where he's confronted with the reality of what he's done, the consequences of his actions, the trauma that he's had. When he's doing a voice, right? It's not like hysterical. It's like sad and scared and angry, and he has multiple times where he kind of yells. He becomes dysregulated. He gets angry at people, or he gets angry at himself or the situation, and then immediately apologizes afterwards in a way that is pretty human. Like, I think there are times when people do things and then they immediately realize I shouldn't have done that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not cartoonish, and it's not sort of like stereotypically like, caricature of mental illness. It is someone wrestling with themselves in a very real way that doesn't feel good.
Yeah. And there's a part in the show where Bruce Wayne takes him out. He's like, "Oh, my old friend Harvey, I got to cheer you up. Like, losing the mayoral race wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Your health is what's important. Like, let's go have a good time."
Yeah.
And Harvey kind of like freaks out and like yells at him a little bit, like in a public place at a restaurant. And Bruce is like, "Whoa, man. Like, are you okay?"
Yeah.
And it was, you're right. That when you describing it that way reminded me of like some of these scenes.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember the follow up to that, like where Alfred is talking with Batman afterwards and says like, you kind of were a jerk to him. Like, you pushed him too far, right?
Yeah.
Do you feel bad about that? And again, broken people, making bad choices. He's not. Like, Bruce is like, no, he's a bad person, and I wanted him to feel bad. And so like, he blew up at me, but like I provoked that on purpose, right? And I think actually what he says is like, oh, nothing matters except getting the information I need or whatever. Like, he's trying to solve whatever crime, right?
Reminded me of Batman Noel. Right, where he was saying like all that matters is justice, even if I have to like kind of stomp over some bad people to do it. That reminded me a lot of Batman Noel. Yeah,
100%. A very interesting dynamic for sure.
Yeah. In terms of the art, I do think like what we're seeing here is really interesting. Like, you can see the like Harvey side was he was like a beautiful man, but also like really intense. Mm-hmm. And usually when you see Two-Face, the other half looks more intense, more monstrous, like more evil, whatever. It doesn't look that way here. He looks messed up. He looks sad, And I thought that was kind of an interesting touch too.
It is, yeah. I see what they're going for. I can't say that I love it. Like, I think that the sort of like black spots are a little weird. I have to admit, for the art style overall and sort of animation style overall, I think it didn't get in the way. There are a lot of shows where I feel like the animation is distractingly bad, right? This wasn't that, but I also don't think that it's like that I super love it. Especially when I'm comparing it to something like Batman the Animated Series. I think that art is like unparalleled. Like, I think this is so gosh darn good and unique and of the moment. And this is a little bit more, looks like they did it kind of on the cheap a little bit. In my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's just super stylized. I'll just say I don't like it.
Yeah.
I think they could have done a better job, but I don't know. It's kind of like if you squint your eyes, you can get an idea of like what I think a good version would have been.
Sure.
It just has to do with like all the hard lines and stuff that the art style they were using kind of pushed into.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's the last slide I had. I think we talked about all the characters. Do you have any sort of like other thoughts about the show?
I would just say I really liked the show. I thought it was really good. At the very, very end, they did kind of imply that there could be a season 2.
I think it's been renewed. But I think it's happening.
Yeah, well, I remember at the time watching it and like not knowing, and I texted you and I was like, man, I really hope they do more. They leave a little bit of a cliff, you know.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be resolved, but like they kind of leave a bookmark that you can take up. Totally. And you texted me back, you're like, they've been renewed. And I was like, oh, thank the Lord. Like, I really want more of this. I loved it. I mean, really, I loved it. I loved everything about it. I can't wait for more.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
I plan on watching this again.
Yeah, agreed. If you made it this far and you haven't watched it, shame on you, and go do it because it's great.
Hey, Bat Fam. Hope you like the show. Please like and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. Stickers. We got them. Great way to support the show. They're $5, and you can find a link in the description and on batlessons.com. To keep on rolling, watch this video.